Welcome to John's Tarot. Welcome. I hope you all are having a great week and things are working out well for you, and that you're meeting all your obstacles in the spirit of opportunity. All my obstacles are an opportunity to learn something about myself and the way life works. Today I'm going to talk about, as we continue on Spiritual Week, I am going to talk about spiritual bypassing. Now, I see spiritual bypassing a lot, especially in the rooms. I see it appear periodically. You may see it appear in your religious denomination, especially with new members or people who are excessively spiritual. There's a term in Buddhism, or the Taoists, who say that those that speak do not know; those that know do not speak. And I like to use that term in relation to spirituality and an understanding of how these things work. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about spiritual bypassing. Now, spiritual bypassing will show up in it'll show up in your, let's say, in the rooms, how I see that shows up. Let me read a little bit about the definition. Spiritual bypassing is a tendency to use spiritual ideas and practices to sidestep or avoid facing unresolved emotional issues, psychological wounds, and unfinished developmental tasks. The term was introduced in the mid-1980s by John Welwood, a Buddhist teacher and psychotherapist. Funny, I should pick out this one by a Buddhist teacher. Clinicians in pastoral psychology have identified both beneficial and detrimental manifestations of behavior that could be described as spiritual bypass. American psychologist John Welwood coined the term in 1984 after noting that some people, by resorting to spirituality to avoid difficult or painful emotions or challenges, tended to suppress aspects of their identity and needs and stall their emotional development. Now, clinicians do not necessarily regard spiritual bypass as unhealthy when it is utilized as a temporary approach to coping with acute stress or intense spiritual emergency, such as being new in sobriety. Furthermore, some researchers have argued that certain behaviors labeled as spiritual bypass may simply be a normal, even inevitable stage of any approach to spirituality. Now, how I see this appearing, let's say, in the rooms. Somebody is going to excessively talk about God, excessively, and they're sober a month and a half, and God has solved all their problems, and they've just discovered spirituality. They've just gotten in touch with that part of themselves, and everything that happens is the will of God. I used to hear it when I was a newcomer. These guys, they would be relatively new in sobriety, and my job has gotten better, and they made me vice president of the company, and they've given me a company car, and I've just started dating a supermodel. At least that's how they would describe it. Or they would say, everything is better. God's going to solve all my problems, and they're going to excessively talk about God. The problem with that, when you're relatively new to the concept of spirituality, is I do not deny that the higher powers out there and will help you resolve your problems. But these people who experience spiritual bypassing are doing this talking without having the experience to back it up. Spirituality is an important aspect in solving problems that may be threatening your life, are big problems to overcome, and you're asking for some spiritual intervention in order to help you find a solution to these problems. But true spirituality is experienced through difficulty, through challenge. When I see it in the rooms with newcomers, they're just looking for an easy way out. Without working the steps, without experiencing the challenge, without having to do the work. They're a month and a half in, and they know all about God. And they're willing to tell you all about Him too, and all about how to overcome your problems. And then what happens to them is then they'll experience inevitable. Some challenge will affect them, where they'll be hit with some challenge, and then they disappear. all their talk of spirituality, all that braggadocio, and they're gone. They disappeared. Many of them go out and drink again. Many of them go out and use again because it was all talk and no action. One of the things they talk about in the program that I belong to is that faith without works is dead. Which means that all the talk that you've been doing, you have to do work to back it up. And then when you meet the challenges in life that will inevitably come, you will have to inevitably have to face, you'll be able to face them and use aspects of your spirituality to overcome your particular problem. And I'm just talking about normal life problems. And you can overcome them. So let me move over to my tarot page. And here we are at my tarot page. I remember one time in my life, it was about a year before I got sober. The first time I encountered any true spirituality. And I was new to Buddhism, and I had some prayers answered. I don't know how that happened, but they were answered pretty quickly and pretty astonishingly. And this is how it had manifested in my life, what we call spiritual bypassing. So I was still using drugs and drinking, and I'm telling everybody about, I had this prayer answered, that prayer answered, and Buddhism this and Buddhism that, and wow, this blah, blah, blah. I was truly astounded and impressed by the results, the physical manifestation of results I was experiencing. And it just blew me away. And I would talk about it a lot. I would talk about it a great deal until somebody, till somebody brought it to my attention. They go, John, you talk about this a lot. You're talking about this a great deal. But you got this, you got that. You prayed for this, you prayed for that. And how come you haven't prayed to get yourself sober? What? That never occurred to me. I was using meth at the time. I'm drinking at the time. And that had never occurred to me. How come you haven't prayed? How come your life hasn't improved? You got a few material things. How come you haven't prayed for your life to improve? And I couldn't answer that question. But that was and what finally happened was I finally did the prayer, which brought me to where I am today, where I prayed that I can't live this way any longer, and I am willing to do whatever it takes to be able to change. And shortly after I said that prayer, things got dramatic. They changed dramatically, and I've changed. I'm 30. I had a 37-year anniversary of sobriety, and I moved into semi-retirement after a career in nursing. And I want to tell you, from where I was to move into a semi-retirement after being an ICU nurse, it's impossible. I don't know how this happened. It was impossible, but it was a journey I managed to make. When I when I got sober, I always say I was the uncola guy. I was unwashed, uneducated, undesirable element of society. I was an uncola guy. And absolutely incredible. So, that's how it manifested in my life, spiritual bypassing. And I just want you to be aware of it when you see it, what it is, and maybe be able to help that person. Just say, hey, you need to slow down. Slow down there, cowboy, and we're going to work through this. It'll be okay because there's some surprises ahead of you. They won't believe you probably, but maybe you could try it. Or if you're experiencing it in your own life, you could do a little self-reflection and say, boy, have I been doing that? And is that what I want to do? Is that how I want to be? So let's throw a couple tarot cards and see what simple. What my ability to read tarot is a gift, an expression of divine love, and I'm here to share it with you in that same spirit. 3 cards. What can the tarot tell us about spiritual bypassing? That's fine. I think that'll be perfect. The tarot is a form of spirituality. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit in my next video because it gives you an opportunity to look at things in a different light, from a different position. The I Ching is a ancient form of spirituality because it'll take a problem and phrase it in a different light and it'll give you some specific direction on what you could do to have the most positive influence upon that situation. If you would like a little reading or something, I am putting together an opportunity to do some live readings, and hopefully I'll have that up and running by this week, next week. But what can the tarot tell us about spiritual bypassing, what we need to be aware of? What do we need to be aware of in terms of spiritual bypassing? Oh, boy. I've talked about the things from my experience with it. Very dangerous in early sobriety if you depend on that for a long-term solution, because you will inevitably be met with some surprises, and that's normal. That's a normal part of the path. What can you tell us about spiritual bypassing? And I'll be interested to see what kind of answers we get. What can you tell us about spiritual bypassing? All right, and cut the deck. And my first card will be the Tower. You can see it. There it is. The Tower card. Now, you would think this is one of more interesting cards in the deck. Spiritual bypassing is definitely going to happen when you're having a Tower experience, when the whole way that your method of dealing with life is collapsing. Everything you've built on uneven foundation is collapsing. And it usually sometimes happens in a flash. You can see that the flash is there, right? The lightning, and people are falling out of the high tower. And the whole situation, your life is crashing. This is the time, and you're looking for something to grasp onto. Certainly in my experience, what I did back then, my life was crashed. Not only crashing, it was crashed. So when I discovered some part of spirituality, I grasped onto it because I had nothing else to grasp onto. And I guess it served a purpose in my life. It prevented me from becoming suicidal. But this is when it will appear, is when you're having a Tower experience in your life. Your outer life is crashing. Everything you've worked to build is crashing. Your identity may be crashing. Your concepts on life may be, this isn't working type of thing. And that's what was happening to me personally. So the spiritual bypassing, and when I see it, the newcomers in the rooms, their life has crashed. They're looking for something to grab onto that's going to solve all their problems easily and instantly. Unfortunately, that's not what happens. The good thing about the Tower card is, though you're crashing, though you're using the spiritual bypassing as a method to help guide you onto the next step, which will be the next card. Your life will be rebuilt on more solid foundation. And I think even the people who went out and relapsed after spiritual bypassing, hopefully they find their way back and they're more cautious when they come in next time and start building that foundation one step at a time in order to build a solid foundation on which to change their life. The second card is the Seven of Swords. There it is. The Seven of Swords, you see, it's often a card of dishonesty and sneakiness and things of that, but it's also a card of seeing opportunities that nobody else has seen, that you've seen. And this is somebody who's able to see opportunity for change. You may be involved in a program such as myself, where you go, you know what? This is not so bad. This is an opportunity for change. In terms of spiritual bypassing, okay, I've been doing that. And that helped me. But now I have an opportunity. I've seen it. I watched John's tarot. I've seen it. And I now have an opportunity to change and to do things a little bit differently. And so it may turn into an opportunity for insight and personal insight. I remember I had this sponsor, and he pointed some things out to me once about me bragging, and I was like, I couldn't see it, you know. I'm doing that. He goes, yeah, John, you're doing that, and I don't want to do like that. I don't want to appear that way. And it gave me that opportunity. I saw that. It was an opportunity. He pointed it out to me. He pointed out my bragging is kind of a dishonesty. He pointed it out to me, and it was an opportunity for me to change. And that is what spiritual bypassing can help you do, bridge you over and give you that opportunity to change if you observe that you're doing it and you don't want to do that and you want to be a different person. And it's part of the process. And then the third card is the Chariot. So it is part of the process. Everybody probably goes through some level of spiritual bypassing on this journey of change in their life. But what it leads to is building a new structure. You see behind him, he has new structures. And it leads to, you see the charioteer, it has no reins. He's being pulled by the two sphinxes, the black one and the white one. And and these are guiding his lives. These are different aspects of your life, the hidden ego part and the positive, intellectual part where you say, I really want to change. I really want to do things differently. And the charioteer is in control of these different aspects of his life. And he's building a new structure. It's a relative, this is the charioteer. It always has to do with, somebody who has a little experience in doing that, even if it's just a little experience. And, spiritual bypassing will lead you to have, if you identify it and you see that you're doing it, it will lead you to have a more balanced life, that you're able to take advantage and be the charioteer of your life and balance the positive and the negative forces in your life. Well, I'm going to wrap this up for today.
Goodbye, Professor Marvel, and thanks a lot!
Well, it was my pleasure. I hope you enjoyed a little bit of today's discussion on spiritual bypassing, and I hope to see you for my next video. So you have a good day out there. You have a great week. Be careful, be cool, be kind, have faith, find courage, and I will see you all on a later date. Okay, bye-bye.